Assalamualaikum to madam and my friends. My name is Nurul Aulia and today I'll be sharing about the impact of Trump tariff on global and Malaysia supply chains. This is part of my supply chains management course. So we start from introduction. Let's start with a quick background. In 2018, the US imposed tariffs on about 215 billion US dollars worth of Chinese goods. China hit back with tariff on American soybeans, cars, and chemicals. This basically disrupt decades on globalization. Companies that rely heavily on China had to rethink their supply chains. And in my presentation, I focus on how these tariffs affected global supply chains overall and specifically what it means for Malaysia. For key effect is there are three big effects we need to look at. The first, the disruption and realignment of supply chain, and second, the rise of trade diversion strategy, and the third, the impact on Malaysia trade and investment. Effect 1, global perspective. Globally, the average US tariff rate jumped from just 3% to almost 19%. That's a hard increase, covering 2 until third of imports from China. Because of this, US imports from China dropped by about 25%, but imports from other countries jumped by around 40%. So, companies start adopting what we call the China plus one strategy. For example, Apple shifts some production to Vietnam and India. But here, the trade of high cost, long delivery times, and more complexity. Effects 1 for Malaysia perspective. Now for Malaysia, these great opportunities. Penang, which is we know as the Silicon Valley of the East, become a big winner. Companies like Intel, Micron, and Infineon invest billion here. Intel alone put in $7 billion for expansion. In 2019, our export to the US grew by 11%, mostly from electronics, but challenge come along to like labor shortage, rising costs, and competition from Vietnam and Thailand. So while it was a boost, Malaysia also had to think about diversifying into areas like medical device and renewable energy. Next, we go to the effect 2, global perspective. The second effect is trade diversion. To avoid tariff, many goods were rerouted. For example, instead of shipping straight from China to the US, product went through South Asia for some minor processing, then re-export to the US. ASEAN countries saw a sharp rise in export, but this also brought compliance and quality challenge. So next for the Malaysian, this was tricky. On one hand, it boosts our export in the short term, but on the other, the US start investigating us for anti-circumvention in product like steel and solar panels. So yes, it gave opportunities, but it also risked our reputation. The government through MITI had to tighten enforcement to avoid penalty. The third effect is foreign direct investment. For the global perspective, countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and India become major winners, attracting new factories and supply chains. This shows us that political risks like tariff are not just as important cost efficiency in shaping supply chains. And next for Malaysia, this was again both positive and challenging. Our trade with the US rose by 5.6% in 2019, reached 164 billion ringgit. Electronic alone made up more than half of that. We also secure FDI commitments like Intel $7 billion and Infineon €5 billion. Malaysia now does 13% of the world semiconductor packaging and testing, but the challenge is we're too dependent on electronics. To stay competitive, we need to move up into things like AI integrates circuit design and green technology. For the conclusion, the Trump disrupted global supply chains, but they also create new opportunities. For Malaysia, we gain in export and investment, but also face risks like dependence. The big lesson here is that Malaysia must build resilience, focus on innovation, and upscale our workforce to remain competitive in global supply chains. That's all from me. Thank you.